Welcome in, everybody. This is an interlude, Parenting the Gap. I don't have a great name for that just yet. This is kind of going to be heavy, and so I want to let everyone know before we get started that this is going to be heavy. And if you're not ready for that, then you should find something else to listen to. I want to talk about an incident that happened very recently. And I'm talking about this incident here because this is about a child, and this podcast is about parenting and how to do it our best. As some of you are probably aware, on Friday, January 29th, 2021, a 9-year-old girl was dragged through the snow, wrestled to the ground, handcuffed, berated by grown men exercising a position of authority, forcibly placing her in a vehicle, and ultimately she was pepper sprayed for non-compliance. Before we talk about the details of this, and if you're wondering where I got this description, it's from watching the video. And I want to talk to you a little bit about how I'm feeling right now. Even just saying that, right? This has been a couple of days now, and I've been processing it for a couple of days, and my heart is racing. And I apologize. I'm having the feels. There is heat in my body. Heat of anger, frustration. And I very much have tunnel vision when I talk about this. And I want to talk a little bit more about my history and one of the reasons why the behavior of these adults creates so much fiery passion in my body. If you remember, or if you listened to the first podcast in this series, I talked about working in a group home, and I mentioned that they were adolescents and they were at risk. What I didn't get into the specifics about is what that means to work in a group home. Within the first month of being hired there, I underwent 40 hours of training. And this training is called many, many different things, but the training that they give to you is so that when you encounter a young person that is unable to regulate themselves, that you are able to regulate yourself and provide them with a safe environment. And that looks like a couple of different things. It's removing them from the situation. It's talking to them. It's having a crisis intervention, being able to communicate in a way that they're able to hear you, because that's different. If you've ever been in a rage, you don't hear people talking to you. It also is about how we physically contain children when they're not able to physically contain themselves. And I'm going to be real clear about this. The people that work at group homes and the people that create this space for these kids that have extreme difficulty, we get shit on, y'all, for physically containing these children. And let me tell you what we're not allowed to do when you physically contain a child that's in a group home. You're not allowed to drag them by their clothing. You're not allowed to kneel on their back. You're not allowed to handcuff them. You're not allowed to physically pick them up off the ground and move them unless there is an absolute danger to their life, as in there's going to be a car coming to run you over. And we sure as hell weren't allowed to pepper spray them because they weren't following directions. Like, put your feet in a car. Don't stab someone, right? That's different than put your feet in a car. For those of you who haven't seen the video, if you have the stomach for it and you're feeling like you're on the fence about whether or not we need to find a better way to treat each other and respond to mental health crises, then watch it, because that's the exact opposite way to respond. Except I will say this. The female officer who arrived after she'd been dragged, handcuffed, shoved down to the ground, dragged some more, pushed into a vehicle, yelled at, berated. After all of that, there was a female officer that was trying very hard to talk to this little girl. And I'm not gonna beat around that bush. She was a little girl, 9 years old. Ugh, that gets me. If you could see me, I'm grasping my hands together in frustration. Had someone stepped back and said, I'm feeling a little frustrated because she's not listening to me. Let's all step back. Let's address the situation rather than react to it. And I don't take this lightly. So I'm going to let you know what I have been through, where I had to pull myself back in a crisis. I have been kicked in the throat, kicked in the knee. I'm sure I've been kicked other places, but those required actual hospital visits. I have been punched in the face, punched in the body, pinched, slapped, headbutted, spit on, and called all kinds of names that you can't even imagine. And I did this work for 10 years. And it was hard. But there was only one time when I knew I had to remove myself from the situation. And you know what I did? I removed myself from that situation. I was in a restraint with a young man who was much stronger than I was, and another staff who was holding their own, and we were doing okay. But it had been a particularly stressful day with this young child, and we do believe that he had some sort of psychotic break, so it's not like he was doing this maliciously, knowingly. And I felt my anger rising because he just wouldn't comply. He just wouldn't do what I wanted him to do, which was to knock it off. I felt my hands tighten on his arm. And because of that 40 hours of training that I got every year, 40 hours, my brain said, you can no longer be here. You cannot support him when he needs support. Find someone who can. So I found someone who could. I contained myself long enough to remove myself from the situation so that I was able to regroup. And then I went back later and I had a conversation with him. That was my job. That's what I got paid for. All $13 an hour. I'm sorry. I'm going to correct that. When I was doing that position, I was making $11 an hour. That specific incident that I told you about. I was 21 years old and I was making $11 an hour. And I had been multiple times assaulted by this one specific individual. But somehow I managed to control myself and remember the function of my job, which was to assist him, help him, be there for him, not to have my rules and orders obeyed. This has been a hell of a year for the police. And I know some very, very good people that are in law enforcement. But there's also a lot of people that have forgotten what their purpose is. Their purpose is to protect and serve. And I do not feel like they protected or served that family. So let's talk about this family, right? This poor family that's been thrown into the public eye because from what has been released, true, not true, who knows? This young girl, this 9-year-old girl, was having all the feels and started threatening to hurt herself or her mom. And what did that mom do? She called the police. She called the police because she has no one else to call. She didn't know what to do. She was probably scared. Scared, overwhelmed, frustrated, knew she couldn't handle the situation appropriately. So she called for help. This is the help that she got. The male officers that showed up to assist a woman and her 9-year-old daughter did not take the time to put themselves in their position, did not take the time to have empathy, did not take the time to even consider the consequence of their own actions. Whether or not their intention was to take this girl to the hospital to be evaluated, to be put on a psychiatric hold because she's being a threat to herself or someone else, you don't do that by dragging someone down the street. And how do I know that? I've done that. I have driven a child to the hospital to be evaluated on whether or not they need to be put on a 5150 psychiatric hold. That's a 72-hour hold, medical hold, where they undergo an extreme amount of medication awareness. How's that? These men came in and they said, well, we're here now. We're going to control the situation for you. And you're just going to listen and do what we say. I mentioned that female officer that came and tried. And man, I feel for her because she's the one that pulled the trigger. But you know who told her to? The man who was wearing the body camera that had been there the whole time, that had dragged this girl down, handcuffed her, knelt on her back, tried to pull her through a car multiple times. And this, again, police car, backseat of a police car. I don't know if you've ever seen one. It's hard plastic. It's not soft and cushy. This female officer came in, asked her what her name was, how she could help her. We want to get you warm. Where is your dad? We'll find him. All I need you to do is just get in the car. As soon as we get that done. And she keeps talking and she keeps talking. And you can hear the panic start to subside in the little girl, the 9-year-old little girl. Oh my God, someone's finally listening to me. Someone cares. And then you hear the officer wearing the body camera say, "I'm done with this. Just spray her." He was done. He was annoyed. He was feeling some shame because there's people watching. They tried to get those people to leave too. There's fear in that, right? Fear of loss of authority. Fear of being shamed. Feeling the shame themselves for doing this. Not knowing how to stop. Not knowing how to back down. Not knowing how to see their own limits and remember that it's not about them. It's about the people that they're supposed to be serving and protecting. And I know there is someone out there listening, and I'm just welcoming the email because I want to have a conversation with anyone who wants to have this conversation about their job is so hard and we don't know and you don't know and you shouldn't judge. I'm not judging. I'm stating facts. There's a reason why police officers have to wear body cameras now, and it ain't because they are so good at their jobs at serving and protecting. It's because they've been given a carte blanche. And people are getting tired of it. And to be clear, I'm a white woman. This would never happen to me. This would never happen to my children. I could have been standing right next to them, screaming at them for being horrible to this little girl, and nothing would have happened to me. And y'all, you better bet your ass I would not have stood by and watched that happen. I would not have walked away. But there are people every day that walk away. Every day that people walk away from that little girl and her mother. Every day. And then this happens. So what do we do about it? Obviously, there is no quick answer to this. But what I do know is that when we start listening to each other and when we start having empathy for one another, our neighbors, the strangers walking down the street, the kids walking home from school, the kids walking home to somewhere because they don't have a home, it's our job to take care of each other. It's our job as humans, as part of a society, to take care of one another, to stand up and do what is right. And nothing about that situation was right. Not a single thing. Other than that mom needed help, and what she got instead was a nightmare. That little girl needed help, and what she got was trauma. Assault. Fear. We're all tired. We're all overwhelmed. This year has been shit. But out of the darkness comes the light. This situation is why I do what I do. This situation is why I'm here talking to you guys right now about how to parent your children differently than how you were parented or you've seen other people parent. Having empathy is not weakness. Being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and think about what you might need in that same situation and then trying to help in that motivation, from that place of love and caring and empathy, that is never wrong, even if there's still an issue at hand. I don't want this to happen again, and I know that it will. We need to stand together. We need to stand behind one another. We need to have some effing empathy. Open our eyes and see each other's struggles and be a supportive hand rather than a restrictive one. I wish I had more wisdom than that. I wish I could give all the wisdom and make all the pain go away. May we rise out of this pain like the phoenix from its ashes. It's time to rise up. Until next time, y'all. Peace.